What is the scariest story you've ever heard? When have you been the most scared? Was it a campfire story when you were a kid, or maybe a scary movie as an adult? Or was it when you stumbled upon a scary story online? Something that will never leave you. Hello everyone, and welcome to Dungeon Bits. As to why I'm making this video, I'll explain at the end, but first, I'm going to talk about this story. So, if you have a passion for stories, art, horror, mystery, and incorporating those things into the stories that you tell, stick around as I talk about the masterfully written tale from 2015, Borrasca, by C.K. Walker. And also, just as a heads up, this is the second time I'm recording this. I recorded this for 2 hours before, and after hours of trying to fix the problem, I just couldn't. Something went wrong with the audio, so hopefully, as I'm staring at everything set up now, hopefully it's all good. Please just bear with me as I talk about the story. Let's go. Let's get into it. This is not waste any more time. In order to talk about the story, I'm going to need to talk spoilers. Talk the entire story. And listen, I'm the sort of person that if someone says, watch the original before you watch this video, I'll just say, screw it, and just watch the spoilers anyway. But I'm serious when I say this. Experience this original story first, blind. Trust me. I will leave links to where you can find this video for free online in the description. It's a short story compared to other novels you might find, and there is a wonderful audio play podcast made by Q-Code, which I'll talk about later, so experience either and then come back. And also just know that this story has a lot of troubling adult content in it, so if you're of a sensitive nature, this story will hurt you. So, the scariest story I've ever read. It's a long story, but one you've never heard before. This story is about a place that dwells on the mountain, a place where bad things happen. You may have decided that you have it all figured out, but you don't. Because the truth is worse than monsters and men. The Walker family is composed of Mother Lisbeth, the teenage sister Whitney, the father Graham, and our protagonist and narrator, Sam Walker. The Walkers are moving. It's not fun for Whitney, who has friends and a boyfriend at home, but the family is moving, and Graham is going to be the deputy in the new town, the town of Drisking. As the Walkers move in, Sam is introduced to Kyle Landy and Kimber DeStaro. They hit it off great, and these three become our adorable trio of best friends for the whole of this story. Kyle is a fiery and sometimes obnoxious friend who buddies up with Sam very well, and Kimber is a cute, quiet, skinny, but very smart girl who becomes the glue of their trio. Both of them are redheads, but due to their name we can see that they're just friends, even if people bully them saying that they're actually related. Before school starts again, they hang out all the time, becoming the best of friends. They play out on the cool days, and on the hot days they sit inside playing PlayStation. On one of these outings, Sam is introduced to a cool new place, a huge treehouse that was 2 stories tall, named Ambercott Fort, at a tree known as the Triple Tree. But they've shown Sam this after a long time of knowing him. If it's so cool, why did they wait until now? Well, one reason? There is a ritual that needs to happen. It's nothing bad, just like carving your name into the tree and saying a rhyme. But if you don't do it, you'll be gone forever. Okay, and the rhyme? Underneath the triple tree, there is a man who waits for me. And should I go or should I stay? My fate's the same, either way. Not ominous at all. At the tree, they do the ritual, and then after playing around for a bit, they find a dirty mattress and graffiti saying, Road to the gates of hell, mile marker 1. Then, Sam hears a horrific noise. He thinks it's something akin to an animal, but not really. It's like metal scraping. It sounds terrifying, and he begs to know what it is. And his new friends say that it's always happened in Drisking. The awful sound that rolls down the mountain. And Sam is so curious, wouldn't you be? He begs to know more. He finds out new information, more so from other kids, since Kyle seems to clam up about it. But the info that he gleans is that the sound is tied to an urban legend, involving a slew of monsters, the skinned men who drag people away to the mountain, to a place known as Borrasca. to meet a being known as the Shiny Gentleman, who makes the awful noise. And Kyle tells Sam to never look for Borrasca. It's all fake after all. Anyway, school starts again, and Kyle, annoyingly, isn't in their class and is instead with some crappy teacher. Kyle swears at this outcome, but a man named Killian Cleary, the town sheriff, Sam's dad's boss, tells him to watch his language. He's just here to do some stranger danger presentation. In class we find out that Kimber is not popular. There's a mean girl sort of clique who are outwardly mean towards her, led by a girl named Phoebe Dranger. And in fact, they tell Sam directly that being friends with Kimber would not be a cool move. But Sam is a legend and tells him to shove it, and tells Kimber that what they said was, they're just jealous because you're so pretty. Aw, Sam's a sweetheart. Then at lunch, Sam finds out that a guy with the surname Whittaker is dating his sister, and her name, if they were to be married, would be Whitney Whittaker. And Kyle has a cheeky lol about that. Then, the sound again. Then a guy known as Phil Saunders, who Kyle will come to despise, says the skinned men kill again. After Kyle makes a fuss of this, Phil calls over a kid to tell them about their run-in with the skinned men to prove it's real, and this kid says they didn't see the skinned men, but their sister, Paige, did. There is an awkward silence that Sam is confused by, until we find out that Paige went missing after encountering the skinned men. This Phil guy seems to know quite a bit, so Sam, of course, grills him, but Phil just repeats what he's already heard. The monsters, the men, and bad things happen at Borrasca. These sounds continue, so Sam asks his father, who is soon to be the sheriff, "You must have heard that sound." And Graham just says that it must be like logging equipment, but when Sam pushes about skinned men, shiny gentlemen, and Borrasca, surprisingly, Graham just flips out and begins shouting at his daughter, thinking that she is scaring her brother with ghost stories, even while Sam tells him that no, it wasn't Whitney, it was kids at school. Well, back to school in the new term, Kimber is bullied by Phoebe Dranger again, and we find out that they're related to a big family in town, the Prescotts. The next day, a History of Drisking presentation takes place, hosted by Catherine Scanlon from the Drisking Historical Society and Jimmy Prescott. Jimmy's dad, Tom Prescott, used to host this presentation, but recently he'd been having some mental problems with his age, so Jimmy, quite brutally, threw him in a hospice and, to hide him while he took over Tom's businesses. However, Sam is enthralled by the charisma of Prescott. He listens to the presentation about how Prescott's family brought the town back from ruin, so Sam raises his hand and asks why the old Drisking mines closed, and if there were any left still running. Prescott answers that they simply just ran out of ore, causing the town to lose its economy, and that there might be one still left running. This is also where we hear a story about the 4 missing boys in the mines, the McCaskies. Sam also learns that after people went missing in the abandoned mines, they blew them up to stop people further getting hurt. However, the demo men they brought in did a terrible job, making iron ore contaminate the water table. It's joked at lunch that since everyone has drank the water with explosives and iron in it, then they all must be taking time bombs, and these skinned men must have lost their skin from blowing up, and they joke around, and Sam tells us that this moment was the last true time of happiness he has ever felt. Because soon after, Sam unexpectedly is told he's been picked up by his parents, and after fighting to know why, he eventually finds out that Whitney, his sister, has gone missing, even though Whittaker and Whitney got in a car this morning. Whitney didn't get to school that day. Theories circulate from different parties about her trying to run back home to St. Louis to be with her boyfriend, but Sam is convinced that she wouldn't do that because she's dating Whittaker, so she wouldn't go back to some other guy. Then, frustrated because no one's listening to him, he checks his email and sees a single message from his friends. Did Whitney go to the treehouse? Spurred by fear that she's fallen victim to the skinned men, he bikes off to the tree line and finds Kyle and Kimber are already there, and after searching he is shown Whitney's name on the tree. And the sound from the mountain comes rolling down. Some time passes until Sam is 17 years old, working at the Prescott sandwich shop, and in fact, Prescott is right there, caught him sleeping on the job, and he needs to talk to his boss, Mira. But even better, he's allowed to go home with full pay, while Prescott talks to Mira. With his time off, Sam decides to hang out with his friends, and we find out that a lot has changed since before. Firstly, Kyle and Kimber are dating, cute, even if Kyle is very protective and Kimber's mom hates him now for some reason. And the Mean Girl clique includes only 2 girls now because one of them had run off with some college kids. And Sam's dad is now the sheriff, and Sam has never stopped thinking about Whitney and how her running away story doesn't seem to add up. He's been obsessed. He thinks it has something to do with this urban legend. But unfortunately, Kimber has to leave because her mother has been quite depressed recently. She's been leaning on Kimber for quite a while now. In fact, she seems to call up and steal her away from the group throughout the story. Anyway, days pass and Sam goes to work, and his boss Mira is crying. The shop has been doing poorly for business, and he continues his shift, but he hears Mira crying the whole time more and more, so he decides, I'll call Mira's husband to see if, he can comfort her. When he comes, however, Sam sits through a very intense argument between the two. He learns that they are trying for a baby, but Mira's husband unfortunately is infertile. He laments how she's obsessed with having a kid, and that Mira won't go with the option he suggests, even though the McCaskey family is pushing her to have a child. Then, change of heart, after Sam and the husband talk about Borrasca, the 4 McCaskey kids' disappearances, Mira comes out and says she wants to do it. Some IVF treatment, perhaps, but who knows. But all we get is that Mira says, I've already called him. The doctor? Luckily, however, Sam is let off work again with full pay, jealous, so he spends the day with Kyle talking about the conversation he heard. And Sam's curiosity leads them to asking Catherine Scanlon from the Historical Society about the disappearances of those 4 boys. They just find out a more in-depth story about the 4 kids, the explosion, etc. So they meet up with Kimber and decide who would have the best info. Tom Prescott. They head to the hospital and pretend to be family. Funnily enough, they pretend that Kyle is actually Kimber's brother since they're both redheads, and Sam is the boyfriend in this scenario. The meeting swiftly becomes intense, however, since Tom is very volatile, but in his ravings he talks about the family business. They ask about the triple tree and he mistakes it as them saying triple the price. Triple the price for what? He says stuff like he could do anything he wanted as long as money came in, and that the business involves a white powder. At this point, Sam starts to push the raving man more, asking about Borrasca, skinned men, and shiny gentlemen, and it drives Tom to a fit of anger, so they just have to leave. Collecting the evidence, this mention of white powder changes things. What if this is some kind of narcotics trade, white powder? And if it is that, are they going to get involved? They're 3 17-year-olds with a bunch of curiosity and not much else, and worse, if this is going on, and it involves disappearances, then the police department could very much be involved. What might happen to them if they get too close to this? But before they can discuss this, Kimber gets a phone call. Something has happened to her mother, and at the hospital, we are told that Kimber's mother jumped from the hospital roof. And after this, Kimber is no longer around. She's grieving, obviously, and with her not around, the boys realise just how broken they are without her. But something is on their minds. In the hospital there was mention of a note by Kimber's father, a note that Kimber's mother had left, a note that no one acknowledges. Especially the police. After some time, eventually Kimber returns, and while they just want to focus on Kimber, they ask about the note, and Kimber says, yes, there is a note, but it was intercepted by my dad, and he's been guarding the note in his office, so a plan is made. The mother's funeral is soon. Kimber would say that she was overwhelmed and she heads to the bathroom. Meanwhile, Kyle would go to comfort her, but would actually drive her to Kimber's home to get into the dad's office to get the note. Then at the funeral, they enact the plan. But when Kimber ran off, Kyle went over to apologise to Kimber's father to give his condolences. And the father also expresses negative opinions towards Kyle, which causes a delay that causes Kimber to text the boys and tell them she's going on her own. She can't waste time, she has to know about the note. Then, after 20 nail-biting minutes of waiting and getting no response from Kimber, the service ended. Kimber missed her mother's funeral, and she's still not answering the phone. Perhaps stranger than this, Kimber's father was seen talking to 2 police officers, involving Killian Cleary, and he looks broken. He's beyond upset, perhaps even afraid, while the policemen look angry. And then the policemen leave. Suspecting that something is wrong, the 2 text, call, try to contact Kimber and get nothing, so Sam calls Phil Saunders to pick them up now. He gets there, they drive, then Kimber replies, "She found the note." They reply, "They're coming for you." And Kimber replies, "They're here." And when they got there, Kimber was gone. They searched in the car that she left outside, and nothing. So the only option, they called Sam's dad, the sheriff, and they drove to the station to provide a statement. But, worryingly, they already had a response for the boys. Kimber's father decided to leave the town that had all these bad memories attached to them, and Kimber, being a minor, just had to go along. But this doesn't make sense. Kimber would contact them to tell them that such a decision was being made, at least. But no matter what they say, Graham Walker just says, "We're looking into it." So Sam replies, "Like you did with Whitney?" And of course, Graham is full of rage, saying, "How dare you accuse me again of not caring and not doing everything I could have done to find her? That he loves his daughter more than Sam could ever know." So they're pushed away. They leave a statement and Kimber is gone, and Kyle begins to cry. For the first time that Sam has ever seen. This event begins a relentless search. Kyle and Sam become spurred by an endless desire to find Kimber. It spans over days, with Kyle almost sleeplessly searching on his own. They search the mountain, the triple tree, they even miss their graduation. Kyle saying that he's not going without Kimber, and the whole time, they were trying to outrun the sound from the mountain. But then, 11 days later, Sam is awoken by the sound. And Sam cries and cries until he cries himself to sleep. All the while, he hears the same thing from Kyle next door. At this point in the story, years have passed since the beginning. People have gone missing, clues have been found, they don't know where to turn. There's just enough evidence and doubt to make a million theories bubble to the surface of your mind. If you didn't read it before, what do you think? If you did, what did you think? Has Kimber, like many before, been removed for getting too close to a long-running white powder operation? Is there in fact a haunting? A supernatural force that is making the authorities just confused? They are trying their best, but a Vecna from Stranger Things like Force is burying the leads. So, the boys are dejected. The sound that beckons death sings them to sleep. So now what's the point of searching? Well, if they can't find her, like Whitney before, then they will avenge her. So if we're going to spend the rest of our days finding this, let's get some Red Bulls. At a gas station, they run into Mira, Sam's boss, and oh boy, Sam hasn't gone to work in days as he searches for Kimber, and Mira now seems happy? The infertility treatment worked, maybe. And yeah, we find out that she's pregnant. They part ways, and then a detail floods back to Sam. Mira's husband didn't say Borrasca when they talked about it. He said a Borrasca, implying that it's a thing, not a place. Or was it? So they return to Catherine Scanlon. The Historical Society strikes again, and they ask whether Borrasca is a thing or a place, and learn that it's an underperforming mine, the first mine to be underperforming among multiples. So they ask, which was the first in Drisking, and they get a location. They found it. They leave with this information, and they discuss that they don't know what's in there. It could be dangerous. More likely than not, it will be dangerous, and worse yet, there is a high chance that Kimber is not there. They heard the sound after all. But if they can't find her, they will avenge. And at this point, if you were a rebel and you said, nah, I'm not going to read the story, then be warned. This next part is the ending. It's the reveal. And it is distressing. And I'm going to say as much of it as I can while making it safe for audiences. So, in a clearing on the mountain, they find old buildings and a sign that reads, Drisking Underground Mine. But some of the letters are missing. Instead, it reads... They run towards one of the buildings and they see something. We were standing in what I guessed was a refinery, and in the middle of the room was a large, silver, conically shaped machine. A conveyor belt fed into it, and the room had a sour smell. Even the dirt beneath our feet seemed to have taken on a crimson tint. This is the machine. This is where they take them, I said. This is the place where people die. With no sign of Kimber, they keep going and see a familiar truck. Jimmy Prescott's truck, which is actually the least impactful revelation after what Tom said, but it also meant that he was there with them. They keep going, then they reach a building, and inside they hear a noise. The sound of intercourse. And worse yet, this building, as Sam and Kyle sneak through, is full of makeshift beds. And on each of the beds were people. Strapped and restrained to them, bound by wrists and ankles, and most of them seemed to be in some kind of trance. And not just people, they were all women. And they were bloated, but not bloated. Pregnant. They don't see Kimber, so they keep going. But before finding Kimber, they see something horrifying. Strapped to a bed was Christy, one of the girls in the Mean Girls clique who supposedly ran off with some college kids. She was in a trance, and worse, on top of her was Jimmy Prescott. The sound explained. Accidentally making a sound, Jimmy snaps around to face the two of them like an animal, then grins at them like a devil, and keeps going. And in this horrific situation, Kyle shows how devoted and determined he is. What was once a trait attributed with him being like smothering of Kimber was now him being heroic in this moment, and he runs past, not stopping till he finds the love of his life. Meanwhile, Sam is frozen in shock, shamefully just staring, wanting to help, but he just can't. Then, a shout from Kyle. He found her. Sam runs past the rows of entrapped women and joins his friend as they try to release the binds, holding Kimber. All the while, Sam is unable to look at her, knowing that if he does, it will break him, seeing his friend so tortured. And then, a bright, confident, charismatic, taunting voice echoes down the halls. Prescott, telling them there's no point in trying to hide, because they remember where they put Kimber. They don't care. They break the binds and grab Kimber. They have to both hold her because she too is entranced in some way. Then as they try to quickly leave, only quick enough because if they go any faster, they hurt Kimber. Sam sees a sight so soul-destroying. He almost drops her. Laying on a bed, he sees Whitney. Kyle pleads for Sam to help him, but Sam, he can't do it. She's right there. After years of obsessing and searching, he finally found her. He'd found his friend, but he knew he couldn't leave that girl in this hell too. Kyle understands, but he can't stay. He has to get Kimber out. So they nod, say goodbye as brothers, and part. At this point, Sam rushes to the bed, trying his best to free his sister on his own, and oh god, it's a sight that is almost unbearable. After years of Borrasca, Whitney was so bloated and everything else was frail. Her hair was long, and she flinched at his touch. She couldn't even look at him. And that was when he heard it. Prescott, behind him, laughing and taunting. But Sam didn't stop. He focused on his sister. He got the last bind off. And then I dropped the last buckle to the floor and looked down at Whitney. I expected her to spring up and run towards the door while I went after Prescott. But all she did was rub her wrists and itch her collarbone. Then she put her arms back where they'd been, turned her head away from me and shut her eyes. Whitney was too far gone, so Sam made peace with the fact that if she wasn't leaving, neither was he. Then Prescott, like a shining devil, laughing at Sam's futile tenacity, and Sam just accepts death. He even asks for it, but Prescott doesn't kill him with a gun. Prescott kills Sam with the truth. This place was called the Stables, and the women here, the horses. The family business wasn't about white powder or any supernatural skinned men. It was all about babies. You see, back when the water table was contaminated, the iron ore had made everyone infertile. And among other problems, people didn't have families. No children to raise, and then Tom Prescott found that when he sold a baby in the family for $5,000 to a rich couple, there was a market. A big one. Rich folk would pay 5 figures for a newborn, and even worse, there were organisations that would buy these babies. And they'd buy them in bulk. But they don't just use it for the money. The town, the community, gets the money and the babies. A community service. Sam, broken, just begs for the end at this point, but Prescott says he can't kill him. So Sam pleads he'll do anything if he lets Whitney go. But Prescott tells him, at the end of the day, Whitney wasn't going anywhere. She had a community service baby in her. A baby for the town, and it's already paid for, and it'll be due in about a week. And after that, Whitney had an appointment with the shiny gentleman. Hearing this, he pleads with Whitney, get up, she'll be killed if she doesn't get up. But she doesn't respond. She probably doesn't even know it's Sam. Then, in walks Killian Cleary, and a beaten Kyle, but no Kimber. She'd run, she'd escaped, but Kyle wasn't so lucky. He tried to beat up Cleary to give Kimber time to run, and it worked. But now they weren't just going to run around the mountain looking for Kimber. They were going to get that information from Kyle. What follows is Kyle standing firm after beating, refusing to tell Prescott where Kimber had gone. And then Prescott grabs Kyle and lifts him up. One last chance. Where is she? Kyle doesn't budge. And with a single stomp from Prescott's boot on Kyle's skull, and by some miracle, Kyle isn't dead. He's beyond injured, and Cleary doesn't want to deal with the cleanup, so he tells Sam to scram with Kyle and take him to the hospital, giving no care for the bloody pulp that Kyle has been left as. His skull is definitely broken, but Sam refuses, not without Whitney too. But they simply say, you can leave and give Kyle a sliver of a chance to survive, or you all die here. So, Sam makes the choice, lifting up Kyle and driving him to the hospital in Cleary's truck, all the while thinking that this hero fought alongside me when this was just about Whitney. Could I bear to let him die for my sake? Hell, all of this might not have happened if my obsession didn't make me need to intervene. Then after waiting for hours at the hospital, tragically, Kyle's mother blames Sam for the son's injuries. Sam's father calms her down enough to take Sam away, and Graham informs Sam that he's going to try to keep Sam out of prison, but there's a real chance that Sam could be put in prison for his crime. But he didn't do it. But Graham simply says that he's already spoken to Cleary and Prescott, and again he would try and stop his son from going to prison, but Sheriff Walker, beyond a doubt, must be involved. And Sam, at this point, there's nowhere for him to turn, so he runs First by staying at a motel, sleeping on benches and sticking around just long enough to hear about Kyle. But he hears nothing. But what he did hear was that Mira had a son. A quick pregnancy. The son's name... William. And that same night, on the mountain, the shiny gentleman screamed. She was gone. But then, an entry about Kyle was in the paper. He'd been released, and after seeing his friend by sneaking in when Kyle's parents went there, he'd been reduced to a mute, immobile, unresponsive state. All of Kyle's fire snuffed out. With nothing else, Sam runs. He runs for years to Chicago, and we later find out what life he lives in the sequel, but in this time of self-medicating the trauma away, he gets a letter from California. There's no name on the address, but he knows the handwriting. It was Kimber, and inside the envelope was the note from Kimber's mother, the day she ended it. And this is the end of the book. This is the end of Borrasca. So I'm going to read the entire thing. My Kimber, I know you aren't going to understand why we did the things we did. It was all born out of love, at least it started that way. You're everything to me, and you'll always be my daughter, do you understand? And I'm leaving this world because of what I've done to you, not because of what you are. I don't want you to be upset about what you are, because who you are is beautiful. My dearest, this town has done horrible things, and all of us who live here are guilty. Read this letter and leave this place. I need to tell you all of this. I need to start at the beginning. Somewhere along the way, decades ago, the major population of Drisking became unable to bear children. Most people blame the town for letting the iron ore leak into the water table during the collapsing of our mines. This is the same water table that still provides the town's water today. They were never quite able to fix it, and the ore is toxic, and exposure causes infertility. The town did, and still does, suffer greatly from its effects. And the Prescotts, they solved the problem that no one could solve. It was an ugly, crass solution, but most people were happy to look away when they were able to raise families again. You see, they took girls, mostly women from other places, and they impregnated them and gave us their babies. And the town came under the care of Thomas Prescott when he started to sell some of the babies on the side for a profit to rich couples. And the sheriff, he helped him do this. But then an ugly rumour started that they were selling to human traffickers, and the Prescotts had to offer triple the price for girls. And in town, we began to murmur. But we once again turned the other cheek, and the city was suddenly flooded with money because of how well the traffickers paid. People had well-paying jobs again, and were proud to call Drisking home. So we said nothing, and those that did were taken to the mountain. Because that is where they do it. There is a place on the mountain where the women are taken, Kimber. Drifters, runaways, and if the parents choose it, sometimes the girls in town are even sold back. They arrange to sell the girls, and they meet them at a tree halfway between the town and their baby mill. Sometimes kids play there now. I think you played there. The Prescotts and the sheriff are the ones who impregnate the girls, and the children are named after them. P children for the Prescotts and K children for the sheriff. And when the women became too sick or too old to deliver profitable babies, they are sent through a giant machine that was used to refine ore, and their bodies are crushed and the blood and skin are stripped away, and what remains of them are their stolen children and the dust of their bones. And all that's left of their bodies is the powder that they spread over the mountain to hide our crimes. I'm telling you this, Kimber, because you are one of those children. Most of your friends are one of those children. Please get out of Drisking before your father finds this letter. Run away and never come back. Never speak of it to anyone. Their industry has deep roots now, and the traffickers have lofty connections. Don't tell anyone. Don't keep this letter. Don't look back. I love you. I'm sorry I have to leave you. We all have to answer for our sins, and I'm ready to burn in hell for mine. Love always and forever. Mom. So, yeah, whenever you heard a name beginning with P, like Phil, Patrick, Phoebe, Paige, it was Prescott. And K, it was Cleary. Yes, Kyle and Kimber. And just as one more horrific final nail in the coffin, that child mentioned at the end, William, that's not P or K. It was W, so was the child named after Whitney? I mean, no, they said it was after the father of the child. So who's W? With Cleary retiring. What's the surname of the sheriff? This story is a lot. Hell, and making it out to take breaks. So, why did I spend all that time to tell you this on this channel? Well, I have two answers. One, I feel that looking into these stories that actually make you feel something, even if it's immense fear and disgust, should be celebrated. And yeah, this story is celebrated, it's loved by many, and for no mystery why, and I would love if more people found it. It is one of the best mysteries I have ever encountered, and it is one of the scariest stories I have ever read. Horror pushes your mind in directions that you wouldn't go otherwise, so it should be celebrated. And two, this year I wanted to bring more of myself into this channel. I honestly considered making a separate channel for talking about things other than just TTRPGs, but talking about this can leave an impact, no matter what kind of creative you are. I'm thinking that this year, every once in a while, I might put up a video or a short that's just me talking about something that I love, but could be useful to someone in any creative pursuit. As creators, we want to make memorable stories, leave great memories, and this story is that. So by talking about it, I hope that it left an impression, and it inspired or enriched your mind after it broke it. And also, like, side answer, I realised while recording this just how much I love telling stories. Any story. Like, I love telling the personal stories about the games or whatever I've played in the past, and I love telling people about them, but on camera, getting to, like, actually invoke some emotion in saying about the story, it was just so fun, and I hope that you also had fun with me if you didn't read the original story first. If I was your first branch into the story, I encourage you to go see the original thing somewhere else and to get the full effect of it, but I hope that you were as scared as I was or felt as disgusted as I was upon first reading it through me. This story cemented a theory that I felt strongly about. Simply, when you have power and the things that you fight can be killed, no matter how big and terrifying they are, it becomes an action scene, not a time to be scared, which actually fits the sequel Borrasca. They're trying to like end Borrasca, kill it, and if you kill it, it's not horror, it's action. I'm not saying Borrasca V is bad, not at all, it's good, but yeah. That's why in my previous videos telling you about how to scare players, all the fear is derived from the time that you're not fighting the monster, the tension and anticipation, the terror and paranoia. Good horror movies like Incantation and The Ritual know that if there is a monster, you should restrict when you see the monster. It should be the end, and everything leading up to that point is mystery, because showing the monster and having you fight it is basically the reveal of the mystery. It's something to consider in your books, movies, games, art, or whatever you make. This story is so scary because you and the characters feel powerless. And to that I'd ask, do all audiences enjoy being powerless and scared? Definitely not. But as to what I said in my Making Cults Scary video, sometimes the scariest things, as Borrasca shows us, aren't literal monsters. In fact, by the end of this story, I was begging for it to be something supernatural. The reveal that most stories have that feels like a letdown and where the tension is released didn't happen. Prescott kept talking and every sentence brought a new horror for me to face. So, take notes from the story. If you're creating a mystery, start at the end, the reveal, and ensure that your audience is drip-fed with the info to keep them guessing. Keep them feeling unsafe by not knowing all the answers. If you're creating horror, don't do a Dead Space, do a Borrasca. The true horrors that get to us are the ones that can't be killed. They're more grounded, not monsters just endlessly screaming at us until we get bored, but people doing horrible things to other people. And you can cut the head off Prescott, but you'll realise you just cut the head off a Hydra. I had that as the point in making this video, but I also just wanted to bring you this story because it's fantastic. If you read Borrasca and or Borrasca V, let me know what you thought. If you want me to talk about the sequel more, let me know. I'd love to. Also, I would totally recommend that you check out the 2 seasons of the Borrasca audio play made by Q-Code, which has Cole Sprouse from The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody and Sarah Yarkin from... But seriously, that play has excellent sound design and voice acting from the entire cast. Sam and Kimber's performances and character interactions are just beautiful, and there were times when I felt like I was sat in the back of their car and just listening to every terrifying and sometimes wholesome moment. I hope that by talking about this, you will be inspired. You will at least have experienced a fantastic story, and I hope that you will see and treat what we think of as horror as something more than just boogeymen or skinned men in the woods. I'm Ellis. Check the description for my socials, my products, and click the video on screen to see more on how to make your stories scary. I hope every one of your creations in 2024 are filled with passion. I love you all, and I'll see you next Saturday.